my bois, Pandiwa Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Blessing for the Feast of Tabernacles. Barakapiyawa Basham Yahushay Asherah Nathan Lanawa Hakhag Hasakawat Bashalawam the water Aman. English translation: Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the Feast of Tabernacles in peace. Thank you, Sobir. The Aliyah Ma'asharai Mechad, Psalms 121. Anya Harayim Ayim Oh Harim Mayan Yabawa Isaiah Yabawa Mayahawa Shai Shemayim Waratze La Yanathan Lamawat Regalia Yala Yanawam Shashramarka Hana La Yanawam Wala Yashan Shashwama Yashbele Yahweh Shamaria Yahweh Zazali Ayu Yad Yim Yad Yawamam Hashemash La Hakaya Wayarak La Balayala Yahweh Yashamaria Makab Rai Yashma Napashya Yahweh Yashma Kabalakya Wabawaya Ma'aitat Wa I Walam Basham Yahweh the water Aman.
Psalms 121. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Amen.
Amen. Shemaiah Shabala, hero Israel. Shemaiah Shabala, Yahweh, Elohim, Yahweh, Echad. Shemaiah Shabala, Yahweh, Elohim, Yahweh, Echad. Shemaiah Shabala, Yahweh, Elohim, Yahweh, Echad.
Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thapala Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer. Abiyanawa, Shabbat Shemayim, Kodash, Hayya, Shemka, Yahweh, Malakwavka, Taba'at, Ratazawanka, Hayya, Aisha, Barataza, Kabashemayim, Natananawa, Lacham, Yawam, Zad, Wasalak Lanawa, Kabawat Nawa, Kasalak Nawa, Kabawat Yanawa, Wala Abiyarnawa, Oh Messiah one, Abel, how was Shinawa, Marab, Kaya, Laka, Hamalakwa, Wa Allah, Wa Thaparat, Wa I will Amen.
Matthew 6:9. After this manner therefore pray, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Amen. Ha'ai tells us the Ten Commandments. La'at, Yahaya, Lakat, Alahayim, Akharim, Alpanyat, La'at, Ta'aishat, Lakab,
Laka,
Paso,
Wasa,
Wala'ab,
Wala'a,
Thaibadam,
Dwaibadam,
La'ab,
La'a,
Talakwaka,
Talakwaka,
Shemweb,
Shemwa,
Yahweh,
Yahweh,
Alahayakab,
Alahayka,
La Shawab,
Lashawah,
Zakar,
Zakar,
Af,
Ak,
Hayawam,
Hayawam,
Hashabak,
Hashabat,
La Kodashwab,
Kodashwa,
Kabad,
Kabad,
Abiyakab,
Abakar,
Wa Amakab,
Wa'amaka,
La'ab,
La'a,
Taratazak,
Taratizak,
La'ab,
La'a,
Tana'ab,
Tana'ab,
La'ab,
La'a,
Taganab,
Tagana,
La'ab,
La'a,
Ta'ainab,
Taina,
Shakur,
Shakor,
La'ab,
La'a,
Takhamad,
Takamad,
Ko,
Ka,
Asharat,
Asherah,
Lara'aika,
Laraika,
Aman.
Aman. Exodus 20:2. I am the Lord thy God which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless at taking his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and holiday. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor. Amen.
Aman, Yeshabab, you see that. Barakata Yahweh by Shimi Hawashai, Sharanat Nana Parya Gapan Tawada Aman. La Yahweh by Shimi Hawashai of Yasha Allah. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh. In the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the fruit of the vine, thank you, so be it. To Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai with Israel. Amadwa, Panyawe Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Barakata Yahweh, Haggadah, Rakawam, Abiyah, Wanawa, Aliyawan, Malak, Shamayim, Warataza, Waka, Dabarim, Chayayim, Wagam, Hamashiach, Mayahawe, Arawanawe, Ahabnawe, Apalat, Yawaitaza, Yahawasha, Zakarnawe, Yahweh, Bartazawan, Ainka, Yash Allah, Zarnawe, Bana, was up, Yasha Allah, oh, Nanawa, Yum Yum, Aita, Kaya Wum Yum, Makwadam, Babakushay, Shalak, Mike Allah, Watazawadak, Alahayam, La, Maganawa, Raparnawa, Washama, Alnawa, Bakur, Shalak, Haroka, Shau, Yahweh Shai, Lanawa, Lamadnawa, Rabiam, Kakama, Tabawana, Wada I, Shau, the Barka, Basham, Yahweh Shai, the Wada, Thum Yed, Why Willam, Aman. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth and all things living. And also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember Yahweh favorably, your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel, most high, we beg you right now, like the days of old. Please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, always and forever, so be it. Repeat the Hebrew only. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the law. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Natan Lanawa, Hatawarat. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us light to see. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Natan Lanawa, Awar, Lara Awat. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the ram's horn to call the people. Barakata Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Natan Lanawa, Quran, Hayo, La Korah, Ha'ain, Yeshabwa. Be seated. Okay, so Shalom Yasharella. All right, so Shalom everybody that's here in Philly. Shalom everybody watching us on live stream. And Shalom everyone listening in on teleconference. Welcome to Hayashrella Kanas for the Congregation of Israel, where we teach that the descendants of slaves, as well as the indigenous peoples found throughout the Americas mainly, but scattered throughout the four corners, make up the southern and northern kingdoms of the 12 tribes of Israel. And that we as a people fall into a lower state politically, economically, religiously, because we broke the laws of God found in this Bible that were given to us by Moses. And we come out as lower state that we fall into as a people by keeping the commandments that we broke. And we do that by following Jesus the Christ, or in the Hebrew, Yahweh Shai Mashiach, right? Who is our example, as Peter says in his letter, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. And one way we do that is by keeping the high holy days found in the scriptures and rehearsing them the best we can, even if we're far, far away from our homeland as a people. We're blessed to have eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart to understand the truth about who we are and what we're supposed to do. You can see the clarity when it comes to us needing to keep the holy days of God, including what we're keeping tonight, which is the Feast of Tabernacles, one of the major holy feasts of the Most High, First there were 3, then became 4, 1 for each key season. This one coming in time during the fall season. When you look at the seasons and look at the harvest schedule. So that's why we're coming together tonight. And my name is Nabia Zerbabal. I have the privilege and distinct pleasure of going through the service with you guys today to hopefully shed some light, to provide some understanding where there may have been lacking. And if this is your first time watching us, or if you're not familiar, if this is your first time keeping a Feast of Tabernacles, hopefully I can give you the essentials as far as what this day and this feast is all about. So let's write down for your notes that according to the Gregorian calendar, that today is September 28th, 2023. But then according to our calendar, let me ask the kind in the back. According to our calendar, what would today be? What month and what day?
It should be the 7th month.
It should be the 7th month. Is it the 7th month? So what day is it? Ugh. What's that? Is that a day? Oh man. Give the brother, keep the brother in prayer. He's counting his fingers.
No, is it 15 days?
What day? What was that?
Is it the 15th?
Yes, the 7th month of the 15th day.
So we just had a new moon, memorial blowing of the trumpet.
Exactly. And when was that? You don't have to say the date, but like where was it in reference to tonight, when we're keeping tonight?
That was on the first day of the month.
Right, which would have been when?
The 7th new moon.
Right, which would have been, okay, let me ask it this way. How many weeks would that have been ago?
I don't have to count.
How many weeks are 15 days when you get to 15 days?
15 days?
Mm-hmm. How many days in a week?
7 days.
How many days in 2 weeks?
14 days.
And the sun went down. Is the which day?
15 days.
So how many weeks?
2 weeks?
See how easy that was?
Oh. Oh.
Like I said, we'll keep the brother in prayer. But yes, the 7th month and the 15th day. That's when the Feast of Tabernacles is. It's always the same every year. And I can understand if this was your first time keeping it now, but come on. So just like the Passover starts on the 14th day even, which is the 15th day of the first month, we have the Feast of Tabernacles will start in the 7th month and the 14th day even, right? Which is the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles. But there's a difference though, because when we go into keeping the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which begins with the Passover, that's a 7-day feast. But now with this feast, it's an 8-day feast. That's why when we keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread, whatever day that comes in during the week, say it comes in on a Tuesday night, that means the following week, the closing will be a Monday night. But with this feast, whatever night it comes in, and it's the same night as when the memorial blowing of trumpets came in, right? So it would have been 2 Thursdays ago. Just the easy way to kind of remember this, right? You kept the new moon, you know when the holy day is coming in, especially if it comes on the 15th day or the 14th day at even. Just look at your calendar and just look 2 spots beneath you. And that's when that middle of the month is, or that 14th day at even, since a month on average is about 4 weeks. So this feast goes for 8 days, meaning what? We'll come together again this time next week as opposed to Wednesday night. Say if we were keeping the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
Is it Feast of Ingathering too?
Yeah, it's called that as well.
Is that like question mark?
Yes, it has more than one name.
Yeah. I had a question. I know why I had a question. I wasn't sure. So we in gathering our crops, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we gathering the crops before the winter season.
Right. There are many things that will grow towards the end of the year, which we'll see in scriptures where it says the end of the year, talking about the end of the harvest year. Because we're not in the end of the year yet. Actually, we're in the middle of the year. We're talking about 12 months. But when it says end of the year in the scriptures, it's more so dealing with what the fact that what we're at the end of the harvest year. Now, for those of us that are still more farm, inclined to farm, this wouldn't be a strange thing, who are in tune with the farmer's almanac and in tune with the land and things like that. This wouldn't be a strange thing. But for a lot of us that are city mice and no longer country mice, because there's been a big shift, right, over the last couple centuries from people mostly being in urban areas as opposed to being, in the countryside. This thing might be kind of strange.
In gathering.
Yeah, the harvest will always be the harvest. And we just had this discussion with one of the new brothers that we're kind of going back and forth with on certain scriptures. He's interested, but he's still got certain blind spots that we're trying to help him with when it comes to the milk. And one of the things we were talking about was just not being sure. We don't know when these times are, when these harvests are to keep holy days, whether it's the Feast of Tabernacles tonight or anything. But one scripture I always like to go to uh, kind of deal with that. I always had to go to this verse. Let me pull it real quick, and then I'm gonna pull what we had to say, what it has to say in the Zondervans concerning the tabernacle, because you see, even the scholars can say some wise things about it, but we'll see if everything is had to say is wise, because we want to make sure anytime we talk about anything of the Lord, especially when it comes to His holy days, we bring it out according to the Most High's righteousness. So this is Genesis chapter 8, verse 20, and then down to 22. It's like the brother brought out. This is also known as the Feast of Ingathering, since because it takes place during the time of the end of the year, meaning the end of the harvest year. In the fall season, or also known as autumn, you see a lot of the leaves come down, at least in this area in the Northeast, right? If you guys are familiar with the maple tree, you probably see the maple leaves that come down. They were green during the summer, but then around this time they turn yellow or orange and fall off the trees. And then you might remember during school days, we'll do different decorations during this time, right? And you'll have what they call the cornucopia, right? Where they did the cornucopia, it was like this horn, but it's like filled with a bunch of different fruits and vegetables and things like that. They would always bring that thing out around this time, and as kids we would say, okay, what's the meaning of this? Okay, whatever. Just want to draw a picture of it. Okay, fine, let's draw a picture. But the teacher wouldn't really explain, or they might kind of talk about it at a high level, and as kids were just like, okay, whatever, as long as we get the color, and color in the apples and color in whatever other fruits are in this thing you call a cornucopia, right? It's a weird word, but yeah, that's all talking about this time as far as the gathering in of the harvest. Okay, you said you had something before I read.
No, say you said end of the harvest here, but things grow. Things do grow in the fall season and winter.
Or harvesting them up, but
Mhm.
when the winter comes in, we're mostly planting things, right? For when the next spring comes, at a majority. I'm not talking about exceptions to the rule. There are things that you might grow during the winter season, and we know when it comes to the harvest, it might be different when we're not in this particular tropic, right? As far as here in the northeast of America, or like you go to the Middle East, it's still within that same uh, latitude. As you go to different latitudes in the globe, you're gonna have different seasons, right? As far as when it's cold, when it's hot, right? Sometimes the colder season might be shorter, right? Depending on where you live at, and then they have their own things that they might grow there during their times.
That's where we would get things that are not in season here, but in season in the other countries. So that's where we have the trades and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. So just to show you guys what I'm talking about, let me share this real quick. If you guys don't remember, this thing I'm talking about, the cornucopia. I'll show you a picture. So if you just put in this word and search it on Google, this is what you'll see. See if you guys can see that. Hold on. Yeah, so this is what the picture looks like. I had no idea it's supposed to be a goat's horn, because it was always just made to be a basket. I'm just now I'm a little concerned because I know the word probably has some Greek origin. I'm wondering if there's any pagan association with this. Because we're just talking about, partaking in, reaping the harvest, not any weird celebration that the Greeks or the Romans or anybody would do during this time to celebrate some false god, but celebrating the Most High's blessing. So we see here, so these are some of the pictures they would show us, right?
1 second.
This is the time that we're in, during the time of the ingathering. You see, how to draw a cornucopia. See, I remember having to draw this thing when I was young. Good, you got it. Yeah, something you want to bring out?
Yeah, the school with Brazil. Brazil is in their summertime. Summertime now.
Mm-hmm.
Summer is December. I gotta look.
So now this is Genesis chapter 8. I'm going to start from 20 and read down to 22. So Genesis chapter 8 and verse 20. So who's this Noah? When is this? Right after the flood subsided and the dry earth began to appear again, when he sent the birds out to make sure. This is after the dry earth, the earth dried back up after the flood that took place. And Noah is showing his appreciation to God for preserving him and his family and the animals on the ark. So now it says that in Genesis chapter 8 and verse 20, it says, and Noah built an altar unto Yahweh. It says, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl and offered burnt offerings on the altar. So this is important because it's letting us know that what Noah knew about the law, even though we know Moses wrote it, wrote it after the Most High wrote the 10 Commandments with his finger. He had Moses write down the rest, and those other scribes, he would instruct to write the rest. But now that law, or that understanding of the law, actually goes all the way back to Adam. It was preserved over generations to where it was observed when it came to Noah and what he was dealing with, and the Most High dealing with him. And then we would see it come back again through his son Shem, and later on down through Eber. And then from Eber, the father of the Hebrews, who will come down to then Abraham, and then Abraham to Isaac, and then Isaac to Jacob. The Most High would renew that bloodline, but he would do it through a particular family line within that family that came before. So we're Adamites, we're Noahites, we're Abrahamites, Isaacites, and we're Israelites. But that's where we stop.
One correction.
Mm-hmm.
I said summer in Brazil, but it's actually spring.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're in the springtime now. September 21st, or December 20th.
All right. So now it says in verse 21, it says after Noah built an altar, which that's the law that goes into how to do that, as well as you have to have the law to know which animals are clean, which ones are unclean, right? When you go into the law, the Most High made certain animals to be unclean, as they're made to be natural garbage cans. Other ones he made to be clean, that you can partake in, right? As far as for consumption. But the unclean ones, they had their purpose too, right? So Noah knew the difference, meaning he knew about the law. And every clean fowl, and he offered burnt offerings on the altar. So you need to build an altar too, according to the law. It says in 21, And the Lord, or Yahweh in the Hebrew, smelled a sweet savor, and Yahweh said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. So the same manner he did this using water to smite all the living, save those preserved with Noah. He said he's not going to do this again, right? And we were reading about that earlier in the previous chapters about the Most High seeing how man's heart was constantly evil, constantly doing wickedly. And we're definitely in these times now, just like Yahushua said, as it was in days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the second coming of the Son of Man, where people have forgotten the true and living God once again en masse. And there's only going to be a few of us, just like Noah and his family then. So there's going to be a few of us now that are going to wake up to this truth and stick to it and be preserved for the next destruction that's coming. But now here's the key reason why I wanted to get this. In verse 22, it says, while the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, right? And cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. You see? So we go back to the Old Testament, and as people like to say, oh, that was back in biblical days. You're talking about this. Oh, yeah, they lived long like that, those many years, because that was biblical times. They told time different back then. We don't know what's going on now. That's confusion, because a year will always be a year. Whether you use the sun to tell the month or even the moon to tell the month, right? You're always going to have the 4 seasons that make up a year, regardless, right? So that when we see so and so beget so and so, and then so and so is so many years old when they beget so and so, right? They were telling time the same way, right? As far as how long you've been in the earth. So that's not, uh, a miscalculation or, a mistranslation. No, people were actually living that long, and they were telling time the same way. And they had the 4 seasons, just like we have the 4 seasons now. Here's just mentioning the main seasons, and it doesn't include the middle seasons because I think you could say they're like a transition, right? Spring is like the transition between the winter and the summer, and the fall is like the transition between the summer and the winter. If you think about it like that, like a solstice or like an equinox. Solstice is being the main time when you're in the winter or in the summer, and the equinox is being those points that are in between. But I always like to show this verse to show they still told time according to the seasons as far as a year. But I just wanted to read this real quick. This is in the Zondervan on page 574. This is usually a useful tool, right? Be mindful because sometimes the scholars may get certain things wrong, but usually it's a good tool to complement the scriptures, but never to replace. But let's see what it has to say here when you look under the entry of tabernacle, right? Because if we're not familiar, the word tabernacle just means tent, right? That's what the word means. But now the Feast of Tabernacles is talking about tabernacles, but for a certain purpose, as we're going to read. But it says here on page 574, tabernacle. It says portable sanctuary that served as a place of worship for the Israelites from the time of the wilderness wanderings until the building of the temple by Solomon, typifying God's dwelling with his people. All right, so far so good, because that's what it does typify, right? And we'll get a verse to show that too. This is variously called, and then we have other scriptures where it shows different things it was called as far as the feast. Then it says described in Exodus 25:10 to 27. 25 and 10 to 27 and 19, right? That's where you go into the actual dimensions of the tabernacle, right? And how it was built and what it was made out of as far as the raw materials used to make it. But you find a lot of those things in the Exodus for different items. Like we was reading about the Ark of the Testimony, right? Not too long ago. Then it says also verse 35 to 38 in Exodus chapter 27. Then it says tabernacle stood in a court 150 feet long and 75 feet wide, the sides of which were covered with linen curtains, which were fastened to 60 supporting pillars of bronze. Within the court were the great altar of burnt offering, right? which they quote here Exodus 27, 1-8, and it says, and the bronze laver used by the priests for ritual uh, ablutions. And they reference Exodus 30, 17-21, right? Then it says the tabernacle which stood at the west end of the court was a wooden structure 45 by 15 feet divided by a heavy veil into two parts, a holy place and a most holy place. It says this was covered on the inside with embroidered linen tapestry and on the outside with double blankets of skin. The holy place contained the table of showbread, a golden candlestick, and the altar of incense. Now, remember, we're just reading this in the Sabbath service. We're going into the design or layout of the temple that Solomon built, right? And how it's similar framework and how it can be compared to the tabernacle that preceded it, right? So here we're going into the details of the tabernacle that we had before. We settled in Israel and then established ourselves, like I think Khan Samak was reading about in Mount Moriah, where we would lay the foundation of that initial temple. So before that, we had the tabernacle, and we still kept it even after we had the tabernacle, even after we built the temple. It says the holy place contained the table. I read this. The most holy place, or the holy of holies, had in it only the Ark of the Covenant, a small box-like structure of wood covered with gold, in which there were the tablets of the law, a pot of manna, and Aaron's rod. It references Exodus 25-16, as well as verse 22, and also Hebrews 9-4 here. The tabernacle was set up at Sinai, the beginning of the second year after leaving Egypt. And then it references Exodus 40, right? Because it took us a year when you read that in that first chapter, Exodus 40, to assemble all the raw materials together and actually build it. As far as all different things that we needed for the tabernacle and all the things that went inside when we first came out of Egypt, and as the Most High was building us up to be a sovereign nation, He wanted us to build pretty much a portable place of worship that we would take with us in our travels in the wilderness, where we always break it down and then set it back up, right? Like breaking camp and setting up camp, and we could do our worship once we were in a place. It says, the tabernacle was set up at Sinai in the beginning of the second year after leaving Egypt. For 35 years it stood at Kadesh and always preceded the Israelites went on the march, references Numbers 10, 33, 36. Then it says later it was stationed at Gilgal, references Joshua 4:19, Shiloh, Joshua 18:1, Nob, 1 Samuel 21:1. Oh, interesting. And we were reading about that when we were going into 1 Samuel's. Gibeon, 1 Chronicles 16:39, as well as 21 and 29. And finally, it says, David moved it to Jerusalem. It says it was superseded by the building of the temple, which we're reading about now in the Sabbath service, right? Every Friday, Sunday, Saturday, sundown, and in particular Saturday morning when we do our Sabbath service. We just read that in 1 Kings not too long ago. Then it says the old tabernacle was but a shadow of the true ideal. It represents Hebrews 8:5 as well as Hebrews 10:1. So not too shabby, like I said, for the Zondervan. Didn't really see any bones in there. Maybe some scriptures possibly might have been misreferenced, but I don't think so. So that's just on tabernacle and focusing on the tabernacle of the congregation, right? Which we definitely look to and consider this during this time. But we also still even consider the tabernacles that we all dwell in, as we are all part of what the Most High's family, in that He intends for us to always consider Him dwelling with us, Him being the ultimate tabernacle that we reside in or reside under. And I know we're just talking about that. Let me get that real quick. This is Deuteronomy. Actually, Leviticus chapter 26. So Leviticus chapter 26. This is going into, when you read this chapter along with Deuteronomy 28, This speaks to either the blessings or the curses based on whether or not we as a people either kept the law or broke it. So it's kind of going into the stipulations of the contract, if you will, right? The perks that come with keeping it, as well as the detriments that come from breaking it. So Leviticus 26. I'll start from 7. Just part of the blessing that we would have as long as we stay true to Him, regardless what the heathen ever try to do. The heathen being any nation not of the 12 tribes. It says, "Ye shall chase your enemies, and they shall fall before you by the sword." Right? So when we fight against the enemies, which are the other nations, reference Numbers 24 and 8. Right? It says they'll fall before us by the sword. Now check out what it says next. So now it says in verse 8, "And 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight." It says, "And your enemy shall fall before you by the sword." So we see anytime we go to war, even when we fight for a cause that wasn't ours, we fight for the nations. We always accomplish all types of great feats, whether it was back then or now, right? So even under the curse, we're a force to be reckoned with. Imagine not under the curse, just the amount of power the Most High can and will put upon us, right? Where it says 5 taking on 100 and 100 taking on 10,000. And we know those numbers can even be thinned out even more. We have special examples, right, of men who had the spirit of might on them to take on so many, right? Like we're talking about David earlier, right, who became king. Or you go back to the time of Judges, we have figures like Samson, the judge, right? Him even taking these odds and spread them out even further, right? Where it's just him, he's taking even more just by himself, and with meager tools, right? He had a jawbone of an ass. I think he had another judge named Shamgar. So he took on hundreds of, I think it was Philistines. It says with an ox goad, right, which is a cattle prod, right? That's not a weapon you typically use for war, but for us, when we got the Most High dealing with us, we could take something as simple as that and use that to go to town, right? If the situation arises, and if our enemies want to become a problem. Need your hand up?
Yeah, and King David, mighty men too.
Oh yeah, we're just reading about them also, right? And those who will become a part of his son Solomon's cabinet going forward. I think his captain of the host, Benaiah, son of Joiada, right? He was a notable one, right? You read about his great feats. Those are part of the ensemble of spiritual gifts the Most High blesses us with. Spirit of might being one of them, right? But it says now in verse 9, let me finish this up. It says, "Your enemy shall fall before you by the sword." Verse 9, "For I will have respect unto you and make you fruitful and multiply you and establish my covenant with you," right? Covenant is another way to say contract, right? What you're reading about here. He says, "I will have respect unto you," right? Because remember, you read the scriptures, the Most High says he doesn't respect persons, right? I mean, he doesn't play favorites, but he does respect nations. And in particular, you read about him having respect unto the nation of Israel. You can cross-reference Exodus 2 and 25 for that, right? So always make that distinction, because sometimes you might say that, people say, well, hold on, the Lord does not respect persons, right? People in so-called Christianity might read that verse, and while it's true, it's part of the law, they don't know the difference between respect of persons versus the respect of nations. And the Most High has set us apart, and because of that, holds us to a higher standard. But now I'm getting closer. It says in verse 10, "And ye shall eat old store and bring forth the old because of the new," right? So going into what? Us being able to stack up, right? Us being able to have not just food grown, but even reserves to lean upon, right? Like we talk about now as far as the ingathering and gathering the Most High's blessing, right? From the field and from the flock. Then it says, In verse 11, here's the key. And I will set my tabernacle among you, and my soul shall not abhor you. So Moses is going to set his tabernacle amongst us. While we have tabernacles that we dwelt in the wilderness, right? While we had a tabernacle that we worship the Most High through, ultimately his tabernacle is among us, wherever we're at, then or now. He says, my soul shall not abhor you, right? That's if we're doing what we're supposed to do. It says in verse 12, and I will walk among you and will be your power or God, and ye shall be my people, right? Because we were already made as people because we were descended from Jacob. But now what really makes us his people is by following his will, right? Which you go into the scriptures, following his will means what? Abstaining from fornication. Fornication being an example of what? Going against the commandments of God. So it says, verse 13, I am the Lord your God, or Yahweh your power, which brought you forth out of the land of Egypt, that ye should not be their bondmen. And I have broken the bands of your yoke and made you go upright. You see? So no longer a beast of burden with yokes on, right? But now you're upright, meaning what? You're like a man. You're mature, developed, right? So you'll see that being used metaphorically a lot in the scriptures. You see being upright. Because spiritually, you want to be upright, but then even physically, you look at us as mankind, we stand upright, whereas a beast goes on all fours. That's why even the Most High will compare nations to beasts, and you see different visions, because while they may have power and riches and might, right, and glory, the way they wield that power makes it as if they're just like a beast, because they're not dealing with the Most High's righteous justice as far as how they govern themselves. But yeah, I read down to 13, but emphasis on verse 11, where it talks about what? How he'll set his tabernacle among us. But now, since we're in Leviticus, let's get into the Feast of Tabernacles in particular. There's many scriptures we can go to deal with the symbolism behind the tabernacle and what it represents as it pertains to our people and our relationship with the Most High. So Leviticus, okay.
You said my tabernacle. I mean, was the Ark of the Covenant no here yet? It wasn't here yet.
We had instructions. Yeah, we had instructions on how to build it.
But we didn't have the template yet.
Definitely not the temple, no.
Because this is in Leviticus, not in King,
right?
Not in Samuel and stuff. Okay,
right.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, we built it back at the end of Exodus.
So this tabernacle mean the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh, that's one of many things that's inside. Just like I read a definition in the Zondervan, right? Because if you actually read the different explanations for like the scriptures, some of the scriptures that they actually quoted in the Zondervan, and kind of create with your mind's eye, like kind of create like a memory palace. In this case, I guess you say a memory tabernacle. You can walk through it as if you're there, right? You can go to the outer court, see who's there, go to the inner court, see the priest now where the altar of burnt offering is, and then beyond that, you go inside the tabernacle into the holy place. You've got the candlestick on the left, you've got the table of showbread on the right, the altar of incense in front of you, and then behind the altar of incense, you got the veil, and then behind the veil, where only the high priest goes in once a year, you got the Ark of the Covenant, which is behind that, right? And then all those dimensions for all those things too, right? The scriptures have all these details. The Most High showed Moses this on the mount when he fasted, and it just stuck in there. He remembered it, and he was able to relay that to the people to say, okay, here's how we're supposed to build it. I got the blueprint up here, and the Most High put the spirit on others to actually design the different materials and things like that, to take the raw materials that Israel brought together and actually to make this stuff.
No, I was just wondering if we're able to see the priests do certain things, but not everything though.
Mm-hmm.
The certain things that they will do it in there, but we're not going to see. But certain things we see when they do the offering, right? The burnt offering.
Right, because the altar burnt offering was pretty much like the bridge, like that's the first we could go, and that's where the sons of Aaron began. So we'll kind of meet the sons of Aaron at the altar burnt offering. That was like the main spiritual transaction place for us to bring our offerings if we messed up, or offerings we want to show our thanks, our appreciation, right? Because we had different offerings for different causes, right?
I want to. The rest of us can see what's inside the Ark of the Covenant.
Well, we know what's in there according to the scriptures,
but I wonder if we can look in this. We want to peek at it, but we can't touch it though.
Yeah. So we know in the scriptures, and we talked about that Jeremiah and those with him were the last ones to see it. So we're thinking in the kingdom, Christ will show us where the Ark of the Covenant was hid, and probably take it back out. Who knows? We might use that one still. We might even create a new one. Who knows? And have that one and put that in another place. But that's all speculation. We'll see what happens there in the kingdom. But we'll know that Christ will know where it's at.
Yeah, one more thing. If Jeremiah hid it, maybe some priests were with him, and they were able to touch it and put it hold it by the poles, of course, and put it in the cave. And buried it from there, but not really touch the ark itself. Because you have the poles. You got to be somebody who's helping it too, right?
Yeah, I mean the ones that were with him. That if anyone was carrying it, they would have had to have been like Jeremiah of the house of Aaron.
Yeah, they just.
Otherwise, would have been like Uzzah.
Yeah.
Perez Uzzah, right? The breach of Uzzah.
Touch that.
Yeah, because remember Jeremiah, you go into his lineage, just like Ezra. They both came from the house of Aaron.
Oh, Jeremiah?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Even the movie you had with the bad casting.
Yeah.
Esau cast it, right? Remember, it showed him taking his priest test. Remember? I still remember you brought it. You brought it, I think, for one of the holy days we were keeping here, and we watched it on the TV. You see him keeping the the test of the priest. Remember? You remember? I think it was like his dad was there, like cheering him on. Things didn't work out. They kind of took the scriptures, but then they kind of like ad lib certain things. They do that a lot of times with the movies, and of course the casting is always poor because they got the Esau playing the role of us. But that's not the here nor there. But
nice try.
Right. But let's go to Leviticus 23, right?
Yeah.
So now Leviticus 23, the main chapter we go to define the majority of our holy days, not all of them, but the majority of them. And we'll go to the last one that's described here, which is starting in verse 33. So Leviticus chapter 23 and verse 33.
Can I read it?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Leviticus chapter 23, verse 33. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, The 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto the Lord.
Right. So who's talking? The Most High. Who's he talking to? Moses. He's telling Moses to do what? Speak to the children of Israel, right? Us, our ancestors, saying, when we do this, the 15th day of this 7th month. That's why I asked earlier, right? What month and day are we in? That's the month and day we're in right now in this year. It says, it shall be the Feast of Tabernacles. Then it says, for 7 days unto the Lord. Now, you might have heard me say earlier, it was an 8-day feast. So why does it say 7 days? As we read on, we're going to get the understanding. So read on.
Verse 35. On the first day shall be an holy convocation. He shall do no servile work therein.
Right. So it says the first day shall be an holy convocation. Convocation meaning what?
He shall do no servile work therein.
No. What's that word convocation mean?
Oh, I mean when they come together, right?
Exactly. A gathering, right? To convocate just means to gather. And it says you should do no servile work, meaning what? Work for hire or work around the house, right? And like I got a question from a Kahan earlier, right? Just a confirmation. That also includes, doing physical fitness. Let a feast day like this be an off day. If you're in the gym, tawab. but it's easy, and then the flesh will be more than willing to, do that running you probably should have did during the week on the Sabbath or on the feast. Surprisingly, your flesh will be, so be so inclined to do it then. But yeah, no servile work as far as working a job or for hire, right? Now we apply grace now if we're not able to take off, if we work for somebody or work for ourselves and have a business. But the idea is to get to a place where, yes, you can set that PTO aside or close your business if you have a business or a store during the times of these feasts. So it says no servile work. Read on in 36.
Verse 36. 7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. On the 8th day shall be an holy convocation unto you, and ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. It is a solemn assembly, and ye shall do no servile work therein.
Right. So it says how many days? 7 days. What are we supposed to do? Offer an offering how? Made by fire. You go into the offerings, you find those in Leviticus chapters 1 through 7 mainly, where it goes into all different offerings and how we prepared them, almost like a recipe, and why we prepared them. From the burnt offering to the meat offering to the peace offering to the sin offering to the trespass offering, drink offerings, right, etc., etc., etc. Right? So we had a certain set of offerings that we did during this 7th month and 15th day. But now here's the answer there when it says on the 8th day shall be a holy convocation. So just like we came together this night, a week from tonight will be the 8th day once the sun sets. So we'll gather again to rehearse this righteous act as we're doing now, and as other brothers of Christ out there and other camps out there are doing that around this time of year. It says, it's a solemn assembly, and you shall do no servile work therein. So we're supposed to keep it like we'll keep the Sabbath, right? We're not going to work, like we said before, that includes work for hire, right? Like a job, or work around the house, like you're doing, cleanup and stuff. Nothing wrong with fall cleaning, just like you might have what they call spring cleaning, but make sure you just don't do it on the beginning day of the feast. Verse 37. Okay.
Verse 37. These are the feasts of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, to offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord, a burnt offering and a meat offering, a sacrifice and a drink offering, everything upon his day.
Right. So when you read this and you go to Numbers, I'll just give you the verses. You don't necessarily have to go there, but when you go to Numbers 28 and also Numbers 29, those chapters pretty much go into the different things that we would offer during the time of the Feast of Tabernacles. So it was a pretty monumentous occasion to where every day of the Feast of Tabernacles, we had something going on, right? We had something we were giving up, to where it was a lot of logistics that were involved to make sure you had things prepared and done correctly, right? So in Numbers 28, Numbers 29, and you can start from verse 12, and 12 goes all the way down, like I said, you don't have to get it. 12 all the way down to 40, when you read through that, it pretty much goes into all the different offerings that we did. You'll start to see a pattern too, as far as how we incremented certain offerings as you went through each day of the feast. But yeah, it'll tell you like the first day we gave this, the second day we gave that, the third day we gave this. So it's pretty involved. But when you read that, you'll see it. So once again, Numbers 29, 12 to 40, we can link with this verse 37 back in Leviticus 23. But you can read on in 38.
Oh, 38. Verse 38. Besides the Sabbaths of the Lord, and besides your gifts, and beside all your vows, and besides all your freewill offerings, which ye give unto the Lord.
Right. So you're supposed to give these offerings for the Feast of Tabernacles, as well as keep these Sabbaths, these gifts, right? these free will offerings, these vows, right? If you made them, right? So those things won't cease, but just make sure you definitely do this during this time, right? And give it to me, the Most High. Read on.
Verse 39, also in the 15th day of the seventh month, when ye have gathered in the fruit of the land, ye shall keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days. On the first day shall be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath.
Right. So once again, we see here gathering in the fruit of the land, right? Like you were saying earlier. Isn't this called the ingathering also? Right? We'll get that in Exodus after we finish this. It says, "Ye shall keep a feast unto Yahweh 7 days. On the first day shall be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath." Like we touched on, we're in the first day, and then next Thursday at sundown will be the 8th day, and we'll come together for that time as well. You know.
Verse 40, and ye shall take you on the first day the boughs
Mm-hmm.
of goodly trees, branches of palm trees, and the boughs of thick trees, and willows of the brook. And ye shall rejoice before the Lord your God 7 days.
So it says when we were in the wilderness, what we did was this first time around, and we will do it continually. It says the boughs of goodly trees, branches of palm trees, and the boughs of thick trees. I think you can say it both ways. Remember, I'm not sure if you guys had this
Boughs?
with Benjamin, but what was it? The Rockabye Baby, right? On the treetop, when the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, right? So bough. But this isn't bow like Bowel. That's like talking about your entrails.
But it pronounced like BOWS.
All right, let's settle it. Dictionary.com.
Bow.
Bowels.
Like
Bowels.
savor.
Yeah. Sibboleth. You say Sibboleth.
I don't know if I said trees.
You sure you're not? You sure you're not Ephraim? Sibboleth.
I don't know if I said trees. Like you said, three and trees. I said trees, right?
Tree. Three. Tree. Oh, and then what's the other word? Honor. You say honor. 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 Honor thy father and thy mother. It's like honor.
That's what
Honor?
it said?
Honor? It sounds like you put the extra in there. So let's take a look and see. Hold on. Because some words, have more than one pronunciation. That's okay. Sorry about the ad. Let me close this thing. And going to the western. All right. So BOU. Bow. Let's hear how they say it.
Bow.
So bow.
Bow.
So I won't say bow. I'll say bow from now on.
You can say bow?
I don't think so. I don't see bow here. Just bow. So I'm saying it wrong. So I need to say bow.
Bow. Like the bow one. Okay.
But yeah, I use that as a reference. The when the bow breaks, the cradle will fall. Right.
Maybe we use that over there because we want to be like Judah anyway. So.
Yeah, but it's English, so what can you do? Try to be as accurate as possible. So bows. But yeah, that's what they call it. I think it's called a homonym. We have two words that spell different but sound the same. Bow and bow. And there's even a third bow. Now I think about it, because you got this bow, you get the bowels as far as your entrails, right? Like your intestines.
Vowels.
Then you have bow, which is like to bow, the verb BOW. So you got three different ones. There might be even more, but we definitely can speak on those three. But anyway, we will gather together boughs of goodly trees, boughs of goodly trees. I'm saying it wrong again. Branches of palm trees and the boughs of thick trees and willows of the brook. Ye shall rejoice before the Lord your God 7 days, or Yahweh your power 7 days. So why are we getting these branches? We're going to find out as we read on. 41.
41. Verse 41. And ye shall keep it a feast unto the Lord 7 days in the year. It shall be a statute forever in your generations. Ye shall celebrate it in the 7th month.
Right, which we're doing to the best of our ability right now in the 7th month, in the 15th day. So now we're about to get some clarity in verse 42 about why we're getting these boughs of fig trees and palm trees and et cetera, et cetera. What does it say in 42? Yeah.
Like, yeah, they doing, we call that boots too, right? In their TP.
Yeah, you can say it's the tent, yeah.
Is a
I guess you call it a booth, yeah. Sure.
boots, right?
I guess, well, not like these, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's just different, that's all. That's their normal thing anyway.
And that's not even all of them, right? Because we know when it comes to Gad, which is so interesting, when you go throughout North America and you switch between what they call in earth science biomes, you'll see their housing is kind of different. So like with the teepee, you'll see that mostly in the Midwest, right? Where the buffalo would, go back and forth, right? Where the bison go back and forth. But you go to the Northeast, they had what they had. They built longhouses.
The log?
The long, because they called it a longhouse. It was made out of logs, but it had like 2 levels. It was pretty interesting. It was like almost like a long walkway. But yeah, you had like they hung up different things, like different like things they caught and stuff, and skins and
made the skins dry. And
right.
Stuff.
You had an area for like the women, area for the children. Like you had like a whole setup, and it was like 2 levels, but they built it like out of logs, like almost like a barracks.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought Esau did that. They came in and did that. But all Gad did that too.
But in the Northeast, as far as the Gad that was here, because remember they were always even though they weren't dealing with the law per se, they had the laws, but they were mixing with other stuff, worshiping animal spirits and nature and all that. Instead of Yahweh, they were worshiping Great Spirit, right? Which is like what's that, But they had the longhouses here in this region, but then you go like to the southeast, they had these other homes where it was like it was like patch roof huts, but they didn't come down as long. You had like a lot of open space when they opened, but then you had like these logs that kind of like went down into the ground because they built it for the warmer climate that was down there, and like the swampy type area. You know what I mean? That's down there in the southeast. But you go out into like the southwest, get out there. They had they were building the pueblos, right? They had the houses built out of pretty much out of like stone, right? To protect them from like when it got really hot and things like that. And then you go to the northwest, they had their own thing they were doing too out there, right? As far as building housing to that could be sufficient for like the more mountainous terrain, So they always kind of built homes that were like suitable to the biome or the environment that they were in. But usually we just think of the teepee, but that was mainly for the Gad that was like in the Midwest areas, like what they call the Great Plains, and then that went up into Canada too, right? They didn't just stop at the Dakotas, But I just want to touch on that. It's funny because this Kahamba Kwa, I remember when him and Khan Manashau and they were doing the flea markets. One time, I went with them one time, and we picked up some different books, things that people were selling, and things that people were getting rid of. You always find like some awesome gems there, and we found this book. It's called I think it was by the Reader's Digest, but it was called like the Indian Heritage of America. It was from like the 60s, I think, like an older book, like a couple decades old. But don't sleep on the older books because the newer ones they water them down. They take a lot of stuff out of them. But in that book, it really was like pretty comprehensive. They had like diagrams for like each environment, like we're talking about now, each environment that Gad was in. They kind of showed like how they lived, how they set up their housing, how they acquired food, and they actually show the diagrams of like the longhouse, of the teepee, the pueblos, of the different areas they were in. So these are all like just different examples of dwellings, right? Booths, if you will.
Yeah, but this kind of booths that when came out, we dwelt in tents, and we were able to break them down and move them and live in another area where the Most High, direct us.
And then following the bison was suitable for them to make the tents, right? Like that. Since that's what they were doing, they were following them for for food, for clothing, and other nourishment, right? As far as the Gad that was in the Great Plains.
Verse 42.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 42. Ye shall dwell in booths 7 days. All that are Israelite born shall dwell in booths.
Mm-hmm. So we made the booths out of those thick boughs that came from the trees, the palms, right, and other like thick trees and evergreen trees, things like that, right? We didn't just use any old flimsy branches or branches we might use to like grow fruits and things like that. So we used the thick, sturdy boughs because remember we're going to dwell on these things, make them tight enough to where they can actually cover you and protect you, right, from the elements, at least to a certain extent. Mm-hmm.
Pitch from the rain. Some kind of rain. All right, 43. 43, right?
Yes.
43. That your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God.
Right. So that your generations may know that I made the children of Israel, us today, like I was saying earlier, descendants of slaves as well as indigenous peoples, made the children of Israel to dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. So it tells what the Most High had us do and when he had us begin to do it, right? Because remember, like we read in Leviticus 26, I will set my tabernacle among them. Before you laid your trust in man, right? You trusted in the Egyptians. You worked for them, right? You were their captors. Oh, sorry, you were their captives. But now I'm taking you away from them to bring you nigh unto me. I want to make you a sovereign nation, right? Now you're going to dwell and have autonomy, right? It's like, what does it say? I think there's a scripture in Ecclesiastes that says like, life in a mean cottage is better than delicate fare in another person's house. Let me get that real quick. So you might say, "Oh, this little tabernacle I built with branches. This isn't like, the housing I had when I was in Egypt. I actually had a all right position. I worked my way up the Egyptian ladder. It says a corporate ladder. I worked my way up the Egyptian ladder. Became a taskmaster myself, right? I had it good in Egypt, but now I'm out here in the wilderness, right, dwelling in a tent. But on the Most High, letting them know, look, there's things that are more precious than just having wealth and riches. It's really about having power over your own life, power over your own future, right? You can't have that unless you have a certain degree of sovereignty, right, or dominion when it comes to power. We always talk about power, right, and the levels of power as far as having control over your own money, right, which in turn buys plants, animals, minerals, right, the things that money can buy as far as power. And you have the place where those things come from, like rivers, like land, ports, right, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, we have ourselves, right, people power, right, or they might say human resources. This is all considered power, right? Like when Christ was tempted, right, and then the devil showed him all those kingdoms in a moment of time, and he said, "Look, all this power will I give thee," right? So this is the power we want for ourselves, howbeit in righteousness, right, to have dominion over ourselves, as opposed to having an answer to another nation, which is what we were dealing with when we were captive under the Egyptians. Good.
Yeah. Or it's not like in Second Maccabees 6 and 7, the feast of Bacchus.
Right.
Yes.
You want to read that or?
Oh, Second Maccabees 6 and 7. And the day of the king's birth, every month, they were brought by bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifices. And when the feast, and when the fast, gotta be feast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus carrying ivy.
Yeah, exactly. It was learn not the way of the heathen, right?
Yeah. And so that we gotta come out of here. We're like, I mean, no McDonald's, no. We're gonna have to stand by ourselves. The most are gonna provide for us anyway.
Come, just like you did for our ancestors, right? Even when we first came out, when we were in the wilderness, the Most High had a miracle happen, right, where He had the manna grow on the ground wherever we were stationed at. But yeah, I got that scripture in Ecclesiasticus, which I'm gonna read real quick. So this is Ecclesiasticus, just kind of going to this whole principle of thinking about why we dwell in booths and how all we really need is the Most High. We don't need these nations. We have them. We don't need them per se, right? If anything, they need us. They need us to be in our right mind because when these guys got the keys to the car, everything becomes a mess. It's like look around you. This kingdom has to go, right? Because of how it was set up and how it's continually run, pushing things that aren't righteous justice. Esau's saying one thing and doing the opposite, right? Practicing so-called white supremacy, but then saying that's not what he's doing. So he's even being dishonest about what he's actually doing and how he's governing. So yes, this thing was dead in the water before it even started. But because they've gotten over 400 years in, and people just want to look and say, man, I don't think they're gonna fall down. I don't think they're gonna fall down. They're gonna figure out a way to overcome, man. It's like, all right, we'll see.
They love it here.
So this is Ecclesiasticus 29, verse 22. It says, better is the life of a poor man in a mean cottage. Mean just means like a small, humble, right? Not extravagant. Than delicate fare in another man's house. See that? We'll see for a lot of our people, and we might have this spirit even now, right? We'll prefer the latter over the former, right? We're not willing to come out of, like you said, modern day Egypt or America. We want to stay here and hold on. Just like our people back then wanted to stay and hold on, those that came out of that generation with Caleb and Joshua, right? I know you love that scene, right, Khan? You always say, you always quote what the scriptures say, where they talk about the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks,
onions,
right?
The fish freely,
right? All these things we had while we were in Egypt. Now we're stuck with this manna.
The fish fry, right?
Yeah, so it just shows the spirit of our people, man. How we can be very ungrateful.
Yeah, but it's a different thing also to say like we're gonna survive by ourselves, buy land and go out there and build. It's like, oh, really? Mean I have to work? I gotta get my hands dirty.
Right, and that was the yeah, exactly. And that was the blessing the Most High even gave us, right? He even gave us that leg up when it came to Canaan, because the Most High was already looking to get Canaan up out of there. So he said, "Look, I'll let you dwell in houses already built, right, and farmlands that are already tilled. I'll let you come right in. Like you go to like a model home, and it's like, oh wow, look, they got the furniture in here, everything. Some people will get a new house, they'll have the model furniture, and they'll say, I'll just keep it. Sometimes people do that. Usually they'll bring their own furniture, but sometimes they might keep the furniture that's already in there, maybe just add their little garnishes, but they'll just go right into the house. Everything just, got the bed, got the couches, got the little mirror or something. If the person who did the interior design was that thorough, and the person would like the setup, they'll go, all right. Most I rolled that out for us, man. But of course, for our people, it wasn't enough.
Like, what are they doing over there? We want to go what they did. We want to be like the Greeks.
Right. Grass is always greener. We want to be like those Canaanites. What are they up to?
By their own. We became myself uncircumcised. What are we reading now?
I want to go to Exodus 23. So Exodus chapter 23. Here we go. And then I guess we'll get the whole section. We'll start from 14. So Exodus 23 and 14, which reads, 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. Right? So this time it was 3. Like we said, later on it'll become 4 during the time of the Maccabees, like you were reading earlier. That would be in the winter time. But it says, 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. When this was written back when we came out of Egypt, it says in verse 15, thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee, in a time appointed in the month of Abib. But you go into the month of Abib. When was that? The first month of the year. But the first month of the year was what? In the spring. Right? Today we'll call it like March, April time frame. Right? That's when Abib came in. Coming from the Hebrew Abiyah, meaning in the ear. Right? Because that was when the first crops would come in. Right? Namely the barley, and you also read about the flax coming in around this time in the beginning of the harvest year. What's that? Abiyab.
Oh, Abiyah.
Abiyab. That's how you say it. It just means in the ear. In the ear, like an ear of corn, for example. But yeah, that's when the barley and the harvest will come up. It says, for in it thou camest out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. So when we came together for the feast of unleavened bread, we always brought something, right? Some sort of offering, right? We rehearse that righteous act now by we come together for these feasts, we'll make a dish, or we'll do like a donation or something, or sometimes both to the church, right? As like a free will offering for the holy day. But just to go into that feast thing, because I want to emphasize that and how important that is. Because like I said, people, you're going to hear these arguments a lot. People saying, we don't know what time of year we're in, and the way they kept time back then is different how we keep things now. And I keep hearing these just different doctrines from folks that don't want to deal with the Sabbath, don't want to deal with holy days like the Feast of Tabernacles. They want to say, oh, we can't keep those now for one reason or another, and it's just ludicrous. Let's check out what was being grown during this time, in the time of the spring, just as evidence. So this is Exodus. Exodus chapter 9. It's going to when the Most High was smiting the Egyptians with plagues, right? Back-to-back plagues, because Pharaoh kept hardening his heart, right? Well, Most High was hardening Pharaoh's heart, I should say it that way. He would let us go. Most High hardened his heart. He would say, "No, I'm not gonna let you go. I'm gonna keep you." Moses is like, "All right, here comes plague number 2. You gonna let us go now? All right, sure, sure. No, I don't want to let you go. Plague number 3. You just would roll them out, one after the other. But it was happening all during the time in the springtime leading up to what? Us coming out of Egypt. What was growing up during this time? So this is Exodus chapter 9. I'm going to read 31 and 32, and we'll go back to Exodus 23. So Exodus chapter 9 and verse 31, it says, and the flax and the barley was smitten. It says, for the barley was in the ear. Is that word, abib. In the ear. It says, and the flax was bold. Then it says in verse 32, but the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were not grown up. Why? Because when do they grow?
That's Exodus what? 23?
Exodus chapter 9,
Oh.
31 to 32. To link with what we read in verse 15.
Oh, Abba, yeah.
Right.
That's it, right?
Right. It's spelled out here in this instance, but you go into the Hebrew, you'll see that word.
Yeah. Abba, yeah.
But now in verse 32, where it says, but the wheat and the rye were not smitten, because remember, this is when the Most High was hitting up the Egyptians with hail, right? Hailstones. It says the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were not grown up. So I was saying, when do those come in? What season do those come in? Because at that time, they were in the time of the barley and the flax. What time do the wheat and the rye come in? Do you know? What feast do we talk about when we talk about the wheat harvest? Oh man, dropping the ball again. Okay, what feast again?
Feast of first fruits.
There we go. Right. When you go into the scripture, it talks about that being the feast of the wheat harvest, right? Which is in the summertime, right? So you got the wheat and the rye coming up during that time. So showing you these are all things that we can point to say, yeah, okay, this was during this time of year, right? But like I said, seeing that more and more, people being confused or just being rebellious when it comes to the holy days. Let's go back to Exodus 23. Yeah, okay, if you don't have land, okay, you may not be able to reap it, out of your field, but you can still keep the time frame. It's really just about, what you're willing to do, right? There's a what you do and there's a why you do it. I'm sorry, somebody on the teleconference had a comment.
Yeah. What was the verse that showed the feast of the rye?
Oh, Exodus chapter 9, we read 31 and 32.
And then you gave one about the one that wasn't that hadn't grown up yet. What verse introduced that?
30, that was 32. So
Yeah,
31,
but then I think
31 deals with the flax and the barley. 32 deals with the wheat and the rye.
I think you went to another verse that showed you when the wheat and the rye. You said it was at the summertime, but you didn't say the verse where that was at.
No,
Well, that's just common sense.
yeah, you can just research that, yeah. And then within this
Oh,
tropic
okay.
where we live at right here, like in the Northeast, and like anything going across this on the globe, you'll see that's when this grows up because we share that same latitude with Israel, the Middle East. That's why you have similar seasons there too, as far as like winter and summer.
Okay.
Because I know
And
Kaham was.
my question.
Okay. I was just saying,
My second,
rock paper scissors, shoot, and go.
yeah, my second question is the memorial of the blowing of trumpet. That was a feast also, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't a requirement that we come there, or how does that go?
So they're all holy convocations.
Right, but what I'm saying is that's not included in the three feasts.
Well, the ones we're reading here, no. As far as where all males must come, yeah,
Right.
that's not a part of that. That's in verse 17. We're not there yet, but we're going to read that.
Okay, so all the males ain't got to come on the memorial of the blowing of the trumpet. But they must be there for those other feasts. Is that what you're saying?
That's the scriptures are saying.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The water.
Yeah, I underbar. But remember, when you say, "Oh, I don't have to be there during this time," it doesn't mean we still don't make an effort to be there. Just like when we talk about the new moon, even Saul was asking Jonathan, right, his son, "Wherefore coming not the seed of David, the seed of Jesse, to meet neither yesterday nor today?" He was like looking for him, right? He didn't see him on the feast, and he said, "Oh, he must be unclean. Like there must be a reason why he's not here for the new moon." So yeah, this is mandatory for all males, but at the same time, don't let there be a thing that kind of like just have you just set the bar low, where it's just like, yeah, because now you become like not exactly, but it's similar to like the so-called Christians, where you just say, yeah, I'm a Christian during holidays, It's like, well, how often you go to church? How often you go to Bible study? I just go to church, on Easter and Christmas. And the rest of the year, I'm just out here, You don't want to be like that when it comes to the truth. You just say, oh, only going to come when it's mandatory for me. You know what I mean? Just make sure he's put that spirit.
Right.
I just want to put that, that vibration out there. But did that answer your questions?
Somewhat. Yeah, somewhat.
Oh, what do you still have a question about?
Well, like I said, it just says 3 times a year, all the mills got to gather. So you're saying on the trumpets, that's not included in the 3 times in a year where all the mills gather. But yet, it's still a feast.
Yeah, it's still a holy convocation. I mean, the Sabbath is a holy convocation too. We're supposed to come together.
Right. But it's a bit confusing, you know.
Is it?
Yes.
Don't see how, but help me out.
No, the Day of Atonement, that's not a feast, so that isolates that, right? That's not a feast at all. So I understand why that's not in the 3 times a year, because the Day of Atonement, you ain't eating nothing there.
Or drinking.
Atonement for your sin. Or drinking, right.
Okay, let me give you a scripture, right? This is a scripture I like to think about when it comes to this kind of thing. This is in Ecclesiasticus, right? Let me see here. Ecclesiasticus, right? And this is chapter 43. And let's get verse 30 real quick. Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 and verse 30. If you could read that, Baba Kushai, once you have it.
It said 43?
Yes, in verse 30.
It says, when you glorify the Lord, exalt him as much as ye can, for even yet you will be far, for even yet will he far exceed. And when you exalt him, put forth all your strength, and be not weary, for ye can never go far enough.
Right. So there should never be like a cap on how much we glorify the Lord and put forth our strength to serve Him. Right. To where, if we could make every holy day, including the ones that males must appear, that's even better. It's like, think of school days, right? It'll give out awards, right, for the students that had perfect attendance. Right. That was considered like, oh wow, perfect attendance. You made it to school every day. You didn't miss a day. Wow. Sometimes that's by chance too, because you might have a student who wants to go to school, but then they might get sick, and they can't get perfect attendance because they got sick. Sick enough to where they couldn't come to school for a day or however many days, right? So how much more for when it comes to the truth, right? When it comes to the Most High. But if it can't be helped, it can't be helped, right? If you're unclean or something happens, right? So does that help some as far as like a metaphor?
Oh yeah, much better. So, even though it doesn't say that you have to be there, it's a feast and you should attend it because you could never glorify the Lord enough.
Exactly. There's always more we can do for Yahweh. And I think we're kind of getting a feel for that as we go through Kings right now, going into Solomon and him building the temple, right? Even David, his sentiments, even when he was gathering the raw materials for his son Solomon, since he himself couldn't do it, right? Even he was like, cool. Anything, even all this stuff, all this thing that we're building for you, all this thing and this praise we're giving you, it's nothing because your power is just so off the charts. Anything we do, it's all yours anyway, right? Like there's never nothing we could give to you, even though we do it. But there's always, another level we could attain when it comes to showing that praise. And it's beautiful. Oh, go ahead.
Just like you building a house, and you said, how are you gonna build me a house? Right? what house can you build for me? Even though that was, a house that we built, Solomon built the Lord's house. And what house can you really build me? You know what I mean?
Right, because the earth, the heavens. We said the earth is my footstool, right?
Right,
I sit in the heavens.
right,
Like this, all this is mine. And they knew that. David knew that. Solomon knew that. You know.
right.
Mhm. Cons, if you remember, let's go back to Exodus 23. If you remember, just raise your hand again. Talking to Yalkanan, he's about to bring something out. So you were reading that, right? Exodus 23. Were you? Or was I reading it?
Read where?
I got a link. I got the link from verse 15 going to the other scriptures about the flax. It might have been me. If so, I'll just finish it up.
Oh.
It says, in the time appointed of the month of Bib, for in it thou camest out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. So we went into that. And it says in verse 16, and the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors, which thou hast sown in the field. That's what we're reading about Exodus 9, 31 and 32. It was pertaining to that, right? As far as the wheat and the rye, right? When we celebrate the first fruits that was in the summer, the feast of unleavened bread being in the spring. But then look what it says at the end, and the feast of ingathering, like we read in Exodus, Leviticus 23 about gathering in, right? Our fruits. So this is the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year. See, once again, you understand the context is talking about the end of the harvest year, because we still got what, 7 more months? Well, 6 more months, right? Because we're at the halfway. We passed the halfway point, right? When the trumpets came in. So it says the end of the year, and when thou hast gathered in thy labors out of the field. So fruits, vegetables, things we will grow in your garden, right? Things you grow on trees like figs, These would be the things we were gathering right now, right? The things we're coming towards the end of the harvest year. Whereas the months preceding, it tend to be, the things we will grow more so in the field as opposed to like things you might grow in a garden or orchard, right? Doing with nations that have power, like Esau now, he was set at the plantation, right? And he had a plantation grow what they call the cash crop, right? That was supposedly be like the bread and butter of the plantation. But then, even though they had the cash crop, whether they were growing, something like sugar, or growing something like cotton, or something like tobacco, or rice, or indigo, right? Depending on what plantation you went to in the Americas, they on the plantation they would always have like an orchard in a garden. That would be for what they call sustenance farming, where they would grow things that the people that would work on the farm, that work on the plantation, the things that they would eat, they would grow those things there. So these are the things we would take up as far as stuff that came from the trees or from the gardens during the time of this ingathering. And it's so funny because here it says the end of the year, but then you got the so-called Jews, right? They got they've got the moral blowing of trumpets, and they had the nerve to call it the Rosh Hashanah. And we talked about that before. If you go into the translation of Rosh Hashanah, comes from the ancient Hebrew, Ra'ash Hashanah, which literally means the head of the year or the beginning of the year. So why do they even call it that? Because it's not a bib. If that's the beginning, we just read that. But it's not the what do you call it? But the scriptures actually call it the end of the month, as far as the end of the year, as far as the harvest year. So they're wrong on both accounts. Having the nerve to try to call it the first of the year. That just lets us know the truth that these guys are frauds anyway.
Yes, I want to read something quickly. Proverbs 24, verse 30. Proverbs 24:30. I went by the field of the slothful, and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. And lo, it was all grown over with thorns and nettles, and had covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. Then I saw and considered it well. I looked upon it and received instruction. Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth, and thy want as an armed man. So being slothful, he didn't even take care of his field. So he's not going to gather anything.
Mm.
He just let it overgrown with thorns and all that stuff. So when I probably looked at other people, oh, do you have, can I have some of yours? And you look at your field, like, you didn't do anything for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? You didn't gather anything, right?
Right. Where'd you stop with verse?
Proverbs 24:30-34.
All right, good stuff. Now, I know I mentioned it before on other holy days, but on that topic, it always makes you think of that Winnie the Pooh episode when that show used to come on, that cartoon where you got Pooh, you got Piglet, you got Tigger, right? They're all goofing off, right, dancing around. I think it's like the summer, and then kind of going towards the fall. And then Rabbit, you see Rabbit, he was always getting on them, right, for not so much having fun, but sometimes having a little too much fun. So he was like, "You guys, don't you know what time it is? We're getting into the fall. You guys better, get ready because winter's coming." They all laughed at Rabbit. It's, "Oh, Rabbit, we're having fun. That day will come, but not today." And finally, when the winter came, you see Pooh. He goes into his cabinet looking for honey, and his cabinet is, like he says, just bare. You see him, shivering because he needs a blanket. He's like, "Oh no, no honey," So him and Piglet, they all go to, and Tigger, they all go to, I think Eeyore too. They all go to Rabbit's house, and Rabbit opens the door and sees them all just there, like you said, just looking at him like. And of course, Rabbit's just like, "Oh, come on in. I told you guys." He's like, "I have enough for everybody, but let this be a lesson." I still remember that, watching that as a kid, just being like, "Oh wow, okay." I can see that coming to the truth, see it in the scriptures. I'm like, "Oh wow, okay." It was already in the Bible anyway,
It's like a small thing, like when Pharaoh had the dream, right? Mm-hmm. So they had to eat. They got to gather a whole lot of crops. Mm-hmm. For the year of plenty, they had like so much. Right. So the year of famine was like nothing out there.
Right. You were watching that video the other Sabbath. Was it Ron Wyatt? I think his name is. He's an archaeologist. He had a couple of videos out there going into like excavations proving the events in the Bible, and he had one going into the temple region in Egypt where they think that Joseph has stored the grain that he has stacked up, the corn he has stacked up for those 7 years. They showed pretty much, they went inside and showed they were designed, they had like these chutes where they kind of connected together. You can kind of fill them up, but then they would like kind of all pour together into like one reservoir. So it's kind of interesting seeing the archaeology. But the gainsayer look at that and go, "Oh, that's not what that's for. That's not why that was used. That Joseph, he wasn't a Hebrew. No. See, that's all fairy tales." And you ask, okay, well, why? Okay, this person is showing primary source evidence. Okay, disprove it. How is it not? So for the non-believers, you can meet them at the level, and they'll still change the subject or still try to turn a blind eye. So yeah, we can meet you there too. We can get into the archaeology also.
I think corn, once it get dried up, I don't know when they get it dried up, it can stay for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. Barley and wheat and stuff can stay preserve it good,
That's something to look into, right?
Yeah.
How to preserve those crops the best way. So Exodus 23, I'll read 16 again. It says, Exodus 23 and 16. In the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors which thou hast sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering, which we're talking about now, which is in the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in thy labors out of the field. It says in 17, 3 times in a year, all thy males shall appear before the Lord power. Right? So 3 times a year, all thy males shall appear before the Lord power, which I think is kind of where your question was coming from, right, Gabar? From what you were asking earlier.
Exactly.
And it says in verse 18, thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread, neither shalt neither shall the fat of my sacrifice remain till the morning. Going back into talking about the Passover. It says, the feast of the first fruits of thy land thou shalt bring into the house of Yahweh thy power. Thou shalt not see the kid in his mother's milk. Right? So that's talking about us keeping the first fruits as well in the summer. Then finally at the end, it goes into don't see a kid or a baby goat, don't boil it in his mother's milk, because you're going to, when we would eat the goats, the lambs, right, and even offer them up, the law talks about them being of the first year, without spot or blemish. So they had to be of a certain age before we would consume them or offer them, right? That's what that means when it says that last precept. So anyone offering, oh, look, we got veal. Want some veal? You say, oh, it's lawful. It's lawful meat. I guess I can have some. No, you want to stay away from that. Especially when you know for sure, okay, this was a lamb or a goat that was killed before its first year. So the heathen will always find ways to make breaking the Most High's laws delicacies, right? A pastime, even, And it's like, I love doing this by going to the scriptures. It says you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to eat blood. You're supposed to eat, animals that young. Not supposed to dress like that. Not supposed to be intimate with that or them, right? Need I go on? You get the idea. Babylon the Great, welcome. Sodom and Gomorrah, welcome. Tyre and Zidon, welcome. Right? Esau done, like we were talking about on the last Sabbath, right? Esau done took on the spirit of all these nasty Hamites. He's spiritual Egypt, he's spiritual Sodom, right? He's spiritual Babylon, right? Which is Cush. You just can't get enough. Even our mother Rebecca told him, she said, "Oh, please marry a daughter of the Hebrews. Don't marry a daughter of one of these strange Canaanites." Remember, she even went to Isaac stressing, and he hearkened to her. He said, "You know what? Okay, fine." And then he said he married one of Ishmael's daughters, but you see him, looking at the daughters of Canaan, like, But anyway, so that's Exodus 23. I read from 14 down to 19 is where I stopped. But let's get us keeping the tabernacles as well, because we're talking about not only the time of the kings, but also the time of Ezra, which is a time when we rebuilt what was destroyed. Let's get that real quick in the 66 books. Let's go to Ezra. Ezra chapter 3. And we'll start from verse 1. Are you able and or willing? No, it's gone now. Are you able and or willing? It's fine. You can leave it. No, just leave it. Yeah. So
Ezra chapter 3.
we're starting from verse 1.
Ezra chapter 3, verse 1. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread.
No.
Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days.
No. Ezra chapter 3, verse 1.
Oh. Yes. Ezra chapter 3, verse 1. And when the seventh month was come, and the children of Israel were in the cities, the people gathered themselves together as one man to Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
Then stood up Jeshua,
Mm-hmm.
the son of Zodak,
Josadak.
Josadak, and his brethren, the priests, and Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and his brethren, and build the ark of the God of Israel.
The altar.
Oh, and build the altar of the God of Israel to offer burnt offering thereon, as it is written in the law of Moses, the man of God.
Right. So going to the first wave of exiles that went back to rebuild, right? Because before Ezra and Nehemiah, couple years before them, you had Zerubbabel and Jeshua. This Jeshua is, you'll see it, Yahushua, right? Or Yahushua, that same name. But this Jeshua was actually the house of Aaron, right? During that generation. It's Joshua. It's just translated from the it's translated from the Hebrew still. It's just spelled a little different here. But that's actually one of the sons of Aaron. This particular Joshua. And in Zerubbabel, you know him. He's part of the lineage of Christ, right? But so you had a representative Zerubbabel from the line of David, and you had a line from representative of the line of Aaron in this Jeshua, son of Josadak. Just like with Ezra and Nehemiah, you had Ezra representing the house of Aaron, you had Nehemiah representing the house of David in that regard too, as Nehemiah was the governor, and then Ezra was the scribe, right? But they both took, part in ruling over and guiding Israel during the reconstruction process. You can read on.
Verse 3. And they set the altar upon his bases, for fear was upon them because of the people of those countries. And they offered burnt offerings thereat unto the Lord, even burnt offerings morning and evening.
Right. So they got the altar set up, put it on its basis. It says, what fear was upon them because of the people of those countries, right? It says they offered burnt offerings thereon unto Yahweh. It says they did it morning and evening, because why in the law, you read about what? The morning sacrifice and the evening sacrifice that was to be done at all times when we had the tabernacle set up with Aaron, and then later on the temple set up with Aaron. Read on.
Verse 4. They kept also the feast of tabernacles, as it is written, and offered the daily burnt offerings by number, according to the custom, as the duty of every day required.
Right. It says they kept also the feast of tabernacles. It says, as it is written, like we're keeping tonight, and offer the daily burnt offerings by number according to the custom, as the duty every day required. See, that was what I quoted earlier. We didn't read it. It's kind of long, but definitely feel free to read it sometime today, just to kind of get an idea. When you go, I quoted the scripture earlier in Numbers 29, 12 to 40, right? Going into what they offer every day during the feast. Read on.
Verse 5. And afterward offered the continual burnt offering, both of the new moons and of all the set feasts of the Lord that were consecrated, and of everyone that willingly offered a free will offering unto the Lord.
Right. So even the burnt offerings that were continual. It says, for the new moons and all the set feasts of Yahweh that were consecrated, everyone that willingly offered a free will offering unto Yahweh, right? So you had like just different offerings people just did just because they wanted to, just because they appreciated the Most High, appreciated His mercy, appreciated the second chance they got to come back into the land after being removed because of their wickedness. Read on.
Verse 6. From the first day of the seventh month began they to offer burnt offerings unto the Lord. But the foundation of the temple of the Lord was not yet laid.
Right, because remember they were part of that first wave, Zerubbabel and Jeshua. So they had some work to do. And then Ezra and Nehemiah will continue that work as you read on later on in the story. But yeah, they hadn't laid the foundation just as yet. I think we are talking about that too, right? On the Sabbath about the now before,
before you had, quick dry, cement and certain materials. It would take a while for, just the foundation to be set. You would let it sit and let it adjust as far as, the earth and how it moves and things like that. It would take some time for that foundation to be set before you start to build. So they had to do that process. Real.
Verse 7, they gave money also unto the masons and to the carpenters, and meat and drink and oil unto them of Zidon and to them of Tyre, to bring cedar trees from Lebanon to the sea of Joppa, according to the grant that they had of Cyrus, king of Persia.
Right. So they got the money, and what's that?
No, I said trees from Lebanon.
Right. So just like we read about during Kings, during the Sabbath, right? They know the place to go to get those trees. They were known for their trees, even though we're the chosen. Most of them will give things to other nations, right? That they might have. Like, okay, they got this, they got gold, they got the nice trees, they got nice scenery or nice landscapes. This place has nice weather, right? The Most High will sprinkle out those things that other places and people might have. But yet, when it comes to our people around the round circle, nobody has all the things and the blessings that we have as God's people. But they will get those, and it says they will hire the masons and carpenters, speculative, right? I should say operative, not speculative, right? Hint, hint, haha, for those who get the joke. So hire builders to pretty much build a temple back up that was destroyed. And it says, according to the grant that they had of Cyrus, king of Persia, because the Most High, remember, he used him. It says he was his servant. You read in Isaiah. That he used to what? Uh, take out the Nebuchadnezzar and his line from being a top ruler. He became a new ruler, and then he granted us access to what? Go back in the land, because the Most High was merciful. So the Most High, just like he can have a ruler like Pharaoh, harden his heart, become like a thorn on our side. He can also take a ruler like Cyrus and then have his heart to where he would allow us to what? Go back and rebuild. Because the Most High, he's the one ultimately in control of all, right? So he controls all the rulers of the nations. And when we know the truth, we now have the freedom of will to choose to serve the Most High or not, to follow his commandments, laws, and statutes or not, to celebrate his holy days or not. Like we're choosing to celebrate the feast right now. So let me get this real quick in the gospel. I don't want to go super late. Just want to kind of touch on just some key scriptures in history. Let's go to the Gospels. Go to St. John, and then I'll go to another one as far as the future. Let's go to St. John real quick. St. John chapter 7. Yeah, we start from 1 actually.
I'll read it. John chapter 7, verse 1. After these things, Jesus walked in Galilee, for he would not walk in Jewry, because the Jews sought to kill him.
Right. So given what was going on when he was out there teaching his ministry, right? This Jews here, of course, within the context, talking about those of the ruling body, right? The Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the scribes sought to kill him because they thought he was doing blasphemy and trying to take their spot and all this other stuff, when we know it wasn't true. But it says he walked in Galilee and did work out there, which is like in the northern part of the land, as opposed to Jewry, which was like in the southern part, what they call Judea. But now, when was this going on? Read verse 2.
Verse 2. Now the Jews' feast of Tabernacles was at hand.
Right. So it was the same time of year, right? In the fall, right? The time of ingathering. Read on.
Verse 3, his brethren therefore said unto him, depart hence and go into Judea, that thy disciples also may see the works that thou doest.
Right. So they said, yeah, go to Judea and then show your disciples, right? That they can see what you got going on. Read on.
Verse 4. For there is no man that doeth anything in secret, and he himself seeketh to be known openly. If thou do these things, show thyself to the world. For neither did his brethren believe in him.
Right. So they gave him this, this very dangerous mission. But in their minds, it's just like, yeah, go ahead and let it be known, right? Like, tell them what you're into. Like, we might have had this experience ourselves, right? Coming into the truth and sharing with family or friends. They're just like, yeah, why don't you go tell that to so and so, right? Like as if they would care, because they themselves, don't believe it. But we know that not to be true. We don't.
Verse 6. Then Jesus said unto them, my time is not yet come, but your time is always ready.
Right. Oh, way ready. Mm-hmm.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
Always? Always ready.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 7.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 7. The world cannot hate you, but me it hated, because I testify of it that the works thereof are evil.
Right. And he's going into why that's the reason why he can't go, because he's saying the right thing and that rubs people the wrong way.
Verse 8. Go ye up unto this feast. I go not up yet unto this feast, for my time is not yet full come.
Right. So he said, no, it's okay. You guys can go up, right? Because my time is not yet full come. So alluding to, well, he knows what would happen to him eventually. He knew it wasn't going to happen this time, but what would have to eventually happen, which would be his crucifixion. Mm-hmm. Keep going.
Verse 9. When he had said these words unto them, he abode still in Galilee.
Just like you said, read on.
Verse 10. But when his brethren were gone up, then went he also up unto the feast, not openly, but as it were in secret.
Right. So he still wanted to go keep the feast. So you're showing that Christ himself kept the Feast of Tabernacles, right? Because, we have so-called Christians that say, oh, we don't do this anymore. Christ knelt on the cross with him. Yeah, he kept it because, he's a Jew and, he just wanted to, fit in with them. But his gospel didn't really care about that. And it's just like, no, that's not it. It was both. He was keeping that because it was a feast of the Most High. And it was part of what his mission was, right? To teach the grace and truth, which didn't involve them not keeping holy days. Because if so, why do we read that about? We read that during Day of Atonement. Paul keeping the fast. You read that about that in Acts, right? You read that about him going back to uh, Jerusalem to keep feast when he could, right? When he wasn't constrained. Even with Acts chapter 2, how it starts off in Peter edifying the people that had the spiritual gift on them when they were keeping the what? Day of Pentecost, which is part of the holy days. This after Christ died and rose. If that was all nailed on the cross with Christ, then why would they even keep the Pentecost and believe on Christ? Right? They would just say, "Oh, we're keeping the Pentecost because Moses." But that's not what was going on there. You can keep going.
Verse 11. Then the Jews sought him at the feast and said, where is he?
So they were keeping the tabernacles. And they said, "Where is he?" Read on.
And there was much murmuring among the people concerning him. For some said, he is a good man. Others said, nay, but he deceiveth the people.
Right. So it was a mixed response in the audience, right? Some were for him, some were against him. Read on.
Verse 13. Howbeit no man spake openly of him for fear of the Jews.
Right. So check that out. So nobody want to talk about him because if they did, it'll be like, oh, what are you saying about him? You trying to say that you like him? You trying to say you don't like him, right? Which one is it? Why are you even bringing him up? Oh man, why are you bringing that? Why are you bringing attention to that guy? He's an upstart. We're gonna have to deal with you now. It's almost like what the fake Jews do now, but in reverse, right? Where even if you try to say something quote unquote nice about the fake Jews, kissing them behind, right? they'll still try to hold you up and hold you out and say, "Oh, you're anti-Semitic. Oh, take his contract, take his job, right? Make him a pariah, make him an outcast. He's anti-Semitic." Come all these different, crazy labels for you. So they had that fear out there, like we don't want to hear anybody talking about the Christ, right? Because you talking about him, it's almost like what you believe that too? Are you in league with him, right? So that's why they wanted to keep a lid on it. But read on in 14.
Verse 14. Now about the midst of the feast, Jesus went up into the temple and taught.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 15. And the Jews marveled, saying, how knoweth this man letters, having never learned?
We love that verse there, right? It's like what they kind of do now, where they'll see us out there teaching, and some of us, okay, some of us may have our PhDs, right? We may be, a lawyer or a doctor and whatnot, right? But a lot of us might just be, working class or blue collar, as they say. But yet, our wisdom and our knowledge that the Most High gave us, we're able to go toe to toe with the doctorates in theology, right? PhDs of different types, scientists, lawyers, right? Go back and forth with them, but just using the simple wisdom of the scriptures and be able to confound them, right? So that's where they get confused. They say, "This man doesn't have any letters, right?" They look at you and they say, "Wait a minute, you don't have the letters after your name, right? You don't have your doctorate of divinity. You don't have your doctorate in philosophy, your MBA, your JD, your MD. How are you talking all this stuff, right? Do you even have a job? But yet you're running circles around us. Like, what's going on here, right?" So same thing they do now, try to qualify us or try to question our reputation and say, should we even be listening to you guys? They did the same thing to Christ. They probably they checked up on him and said, "Oh, this guy, he's blue collar. His dad's a carpenter. He just, he's like, he's Joseph and Son. Joseph and Son carpentry. Like a little, you might see a little shop in the neighborhood. Like, oh, it's Joseph and Son. Okay, you not gonna look to him like, oh man, he's the Messiah, right? He's just Joe Schmo and his son, for the neighborhood. What's the big deal, right? He's to come from some super famous family with all types of money and stuff. He's working class family. Yeah, exactly. He didn't go to our top schools, right? He doesn't have top marks. He's not summa cum laude from, Oxford or Cambridge or Yale or whatever school they try to say are the best.
We taught.
Right? Right. So they question him on his reputational appeal and how he's able to do that without having letters or learning. Read on.
Verse 16. Jesus answered them and said, my doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me.
Right. So Christ always giving props to the Most High. Read on.
Verse 17. If any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself.
Keep going.
Verse 18. He that speaketh of himself seeketh his own glory, but he that seeketh his glory that sent him, the same is true, and no unrighteousness is in him.
Right. So just saying, look at what I'm doing and not just looking at me, right? And judge for yourself. Read on.
Verse 19. Did not Moses give you the law? And yet none of you keepeth the law. Why go ye about to kill me?
So putting it back on them, holding up, confounded, trying to content, what do you call it? Get them to contend for what they claim that they believe in, right?
Verse 20. The people answered and said, thou hast a devil who goeth about to kill thee.
Right. So now they're trying to, diminish him again. You have a devil who goes about to kill thee, right? Like now they're trying to do the opposite. Like, oh, we're not worried about you. Israel do that a lot of times. They'll be sweating somebody who might be, has some sort of notoriety or some sort of fame, and you bring it up. Israel will say, "Ain't nobody worried about you. You're not worried about us. not that important, but it's like, but clearly you're clocking me, but you're acting like you're not. We don't.
Verse 21, Jesus answered and said unto them, I have done one work, and ye all marvel.
Right. He said, I did one thing, and you guys are all, all amazed. Read on.
Verse 22, Moses therefore gave unto you circumcision, not because it is of Moses, but of the fathers. And ye on the Sabbath day circumcise a man.
Right. So going into a situation, right, to happen, right? As far as bringing Moses into effect, because they're trying to claim they believe in Moses. He said, okay, let me deal with you on what you claim you believe, right? So he gave you circumcision, right? And he said, not because it's Moses, like we say the Mosaic law, right? You hear the scholars refer to it as the Mosaic law. Now, Moses would hear now, he would say, okay, Mosaic law, okay, yeah, I was the vessel used, but it's the Most High's, right? I gave it to Israel on his behalf. But they use that to, associate it with him, which, isn't wrong per se. But we know ultimately, the quote unquote Mosaic law or the law of Moses is the law of the Most High. That's why it says, not because it is of Moses, but it is of the fathers. And it says, you on the Sabbath day circumcise a man. So you did that righteous work, but on the Sabbath. Read on 23.
Verse 23, if a man on the Sabbath day receive circumcision, that the law of Moses should not be broken, are ye angry at me because I have made a man every whit whole on the Sabbath day?
That's right. So bringing back what happened, I think it was in John chapter 5, what he did when he healed somebody, right? And they didn't like it because he did it on the Sabbath, right? We don't.
Verse 24, judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment.
Right. So we'll stop here. But so this verse here is really important, right? Where he says to judge not according to the appearance, but to judge righteous judgment, right? Because it's all about weighing the situation in a balance and looking at it and saying, okay, is what the person said and did, but now why did they say and do it? And why is that important for us to understand this matter in particular, right? But all in all, this whole exchange happening during the time of the Feast of Tabernacles, and we see our Lord and Savior keeping it, even though he had to go down in secret. And we'll probably save the latter part maybe for next week when it talks about you go in verse 37, what he did during the last day. But let me get this future prophecy real quick too. This one is also going to show, just like the scriptures say, let no man judge you in meat or in drink, or in respect of an holy day, or the new moon, or in the Sabbath days, it says, which are a shadow of things to come. So it's letting us know that this tabernacle is indeed a shadow of things to come, because it's a timeless law, it's a timeless tradition. You're supposed to be following as Israel, and we're supposed to be showing the other nations, and those of our people that don't know this, we're supposed to be that example for them too. So let's go to Zechariah. Zechariah chapter 14. So Zechariah chapter 14, I'll start from 12. So Zechariah 14 and 12, it reads, and this shall be the plague wherewith Yahweh will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. It says that their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. I think Khan Samat was referring to this not too long ago as well, concerning the destruction that's to come. This being what Zechariah is describing the best he can in the vision, since clearly, he probably hasn't seen this kind of destructive power in his lifetime. But in the vision, he's seeing the power that what we have now to harness the atom and the destruction that it can cause, right? And this summer, it was like one of the big movies that came out. It's supposed to be a biopic about when the wise men of Esau, right? The Oppenheimer, right? And them having success in building the bomb, right? Picking up on the research of others that came before them, like Einstein. right? But this power to cause this type of destruction, the prophet saw us beforehand. This is a good verse to use to show that, and not the only one either. We get other verses that deal with missiles and other types of destruction, right? That we can go into and show. Look, it was in ancient times, but talking about things that we see right now. How did they do that? But now, after this time, after this destruction, in the kingdom, it says in verse 13, it shall come to pass in that day that a great tumult from Yahweh shall be among them, and they shall lay hold everyone on the hand of his neighbor, and on his hand shall rise up against the hand of his neighbor, right? So like we were reading about with Christ talking about nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and even Ezra talks about that too in his vision, right? The beginning of the race wars, as we say. It says, and Judah also shall fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of all the heathen round about shall be gathered together, gold, silver, and apparel in great abundance, right? So we're going to take over and rule over the earth. And everything that they got, that they took from us and that they accrued, is going to come back to us. Then it says, and so shall be the plague of the horse, of the mule, of the camel, and of the ass, and of all the beasts that shall be in these tents, as this plague. Right? So these are tents you want to avoid, right? But once again, they can't avoid that destruction because it's lined up for them. But now check this out in 16. It says, it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem, it says, shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, Yahweh of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Just going to an example, one of the holy days. It's telling us that in the kingdom, we're going to be keeping this feast, setting up the booths, showing the heathen how to do it, and showing them why they should do it, right, according to Scripture. So the tabernacle is not something that's over and done with. It's something that's going to be done in the future as well. And here's evidence of that. But now check this out. It says in 17, it shall be that whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, Yahweh of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. Right? So think of that. You don't get any rain. That means what? You're dealing with drought. You're dealing with what? Not being able to wash. Not being able to wash clothes, let alone yourself. Not being able to cook. Right? Not being able to feed your livestock if you got it. Right? So, and not even be able to feed your plants or your crops, right? Since they require water as well, right? So having no rain has a very damaging trickle down effect when you really consider it. So this is what the nations are going to be punished with if they don't want to keep it. And we know we're going to be keeping the law perfectly in the kingdom, right? And we're going to be learning the depths of perfection when it comes to the depths of the wisdom of the law. See, we all get our black belt in the kingdom, you know. Those that go in. But remember, the black belt is just the beginning, right? That's why a lot of those martial arts, the numbers go down. See, till you get to the black belt, they start going up again, because all the different color belts are pretty much getting you ready for the martial art. The black belt really being you going through all the condition necessary to now take on the martial art and really get into the meat of it, right? That's like us now. We're getting our belts right now, right, so to speak. But now, when Christ comes back, those of us that are part of that 1/3, we'll all get our black belt, right? And some of us might be at different levels, but now we'll go into the depths of the black belt, which it's really endless. Sometimes you'll see that you'll see it on their chart. They'll say first degree, second degree, oftentimes up to maybe 8th degree or 9th degree, but they don't have like a space above that where it just like has like a blank. They won't say there isn't a 10th, but they'll just say at least none of us here have gotten to whatever that is. So just showing you that there's always room for growth. So that's going to be us in the kingdom, right? Going into the depths of wisdom. But now, for those nations that don't have that law written in their inward parts, like how we are, like we have been blessed with, is letting us know that what they're going to have the ability to not keep the commandments, to go against the holy days and not follow them or to ignore them. And the Most High said, okay, you want to do that? No rain for you. It says in verse 18, and that the family of Egypt go not up and come not, that go not up. I read that again. That had let me read that from the top. If the family of Egypt go not up and come not, that have no rain, there shall be the plague wherewith Yahweh shall smite the heathen that come not up to keep the feast of tabernacles. So that's that plague, them not having water, them having a drought. It says in 19, this shall be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all nations that come not up to keep the feast of tabernacles. So shame that what this thing's going to be not only kept by us but enforced, and the nations better get down. Otherwise, this is what they have to look forward to. So going back to where we started in the class, Genesis chapter 8, verse 20 to 22. Seed time and harvest, right? Day and night, summer, winter, these things should not cease, including the holy days that we keep during these changing holidays, these changing seasons, I should say, and the holy days associated with them. So once tabernacles, always tabernacles, right? You can say that Christ and Most High Christ even knew about tabernacles before we even were given that law to keep it. But then the Most High gave us that law to keep it once we as a nation had a reason to pretty much fall into that. But that was something that was always appointed even before we went into the wilderness. It was already said that the Most High would show us, yeah, I want you to keep this feast unto me in the time of the fall and dwell in booths and get your branches. So definitely do that. If you're not able to, like I said, we read earlier also in Ecclesiastes 43 and 30, try to keep the feast and stay in the spirit during this week to the best of your ability, right? If you like build like a booth, or if you have like a tent that you might set up in your house or outside your house, on your backyard, on your roof, right? Definitely try to do that. Or decorate your house with different branches and bows, right? You set them up in the corner or set them up like on the wall, things like that. Things that can keep you pretty much in the spirit, keep you in remembrance of these booths, because we're supposed to dwell in booths all this week leading up to the 8th day, which is the Holy Convocation. So that's something we definitely want to partake in, and something we want to realize and acknowledge the importance of when it comes to keeping this Feast of Tabernacles. But those are just some verses you can look at and consider concerning the feast. Like I said, I want to draw it out too late. I know we're a little bit after 11, but most highs where everybody was edified as far as the essentials, what Tabernacles is, and why we do it, and why we're going to be doing it this week. And we'll be talking about it too during the the classes and the services as we go along during the week, as we enjoy this feast. But I just want to say, Brakateh Hawa by Shem Yahweh Shah La Roka Kodash. For everyone who was able to watch, so everyone able to view and to chime in on the chat and to listen in on the teleconference and also to come in person. But I'll just say, like we see here in the Hebrew, I didn't mention it earlier. So we have a Shah, and a Ra, which is a Shar, happy. Then we have a Cha and a Ga, which is Chag, which means feast. And then we have Ha Sakawath, which just means the Sakawath, which just means tents, or like we say, the Feast of Tabernacles or tents. And then finally, Yasha Allah, which is Israel. So that's what's there in the Hebrew at the bottom. So definitely enjoy the feast. Like I said, definitely stay in the spirit. Like it says in Romans 12 and 20, being overcome evil with good. So anytime someone wants to talk to you about something else that goes against the scriptures, or want to talk about something else they're excited about, some celebration, whether it be, the football game, or, God forbid, this Thanksgiving that's coming up, right? They may want to mention that because we know we're ahead of schedule, or people want to talk about, oh, you know, the spooky month coming up. You know, they got a phrase for October, right? You know, the spooky month. So get my decorations and stuff together. You say, yeah. I'm decorating too. I've got branches and bows and things like that in my house. Oh, what's that about? Why are you doing that? Oh, don't you know? We're the real Jews. And we're keeping the Feast of Tabernacles right now, right? In the fall season, as it is written. Would you like to know more? Right? You leave that door open. We can kind of go into the scriptures more. Some ones we talked about tonight. And show the brother and sister, this is why I'm festive right now. Right? So we can end there unless anyone else has any other questions or comments. We'll do the closing prayers. Okay, I'll take that as a no. So once again, a Shar Chag HaSakawath, once again, to all the brothers and sisters and the little ones watching. Definitely enjoy the feast. And with that, we'll do the closing prayers and we'll talk to everybody in the Friday class as usual. Tomorrow night, sundown, which I'll post that real quick. You can dial in tomorrow night at this number, which I have right here. Tuesday and Friday from 7 to 10 p.m. There's the number with the conference code, as well as the Zoom link, which is profitabletalks.com. Once again, profitabletalks.com. No spaces. That's the spelling for that. So definitely tune in there. And if you want to donate for a free will offering or just for the feast, you can donate here, which is our address, 3026B Germantown Avenue, Philadelphia, PA 19140, as well as we've got the paypal.me/HYK12. You can donate that way through PayPal, as well as on Cash App at HaKanas. All right, so happy Feast of Tabernacles once again, Israel. Hope you enjoy. And with that, we'll do the. Oh, didn't mean to hit that. And hold on. Oh man. Sorry, Israel. Got it. Okay. So with that, we'll do the closing prayers. Shalom.
Barakate Yahweh by Shem Yahweh Shai, Asherana Tanana, Paria, Gapan, Tawada Man, La Yahweh by Shem Yahweh Shai, Af Yasher Allah. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. At Magwa, Panyua, Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. You okay? Yahweh,
Yahweh,
Ba'asham,
Ba'asham,
Yahweh Shai,
Yahweh Shai,
Babakushai,
Baruch
Shemai,
Shammai,
Lanawa,
Lanawa,
Aita,
Aita,
Yam Yam,
Yam Yam,
Aita,
Aita,
Shalak,
Shalak,
Maika Allah,
Ba'ata'al,
Waha Allahayam,
Wa'ala'ayim,
Tazwadakim,
Tazudakim,
La,
La,
Shemar Ayo,
Shema'ayim,
Barak,
Barak,
Rapah,
Rapah,
Magun,
Magan,
Wa Chazayak,
Wa'kazayak,
Banya,
Banya,
Yasha Allah,
Yasha'ala,
Wa Shalak,
Washalak,
Lanawa,
Lanawa,
Rabiam,
Rabiam,
Kakama,
Akama,
Rabiam,
Rabiam,
Da'ait,
Da'ai,
Rabiam,
Rabiam,
Bayana,
Bayanam,
Rabiam,
Rabiam,
Sabalanwa,
Sabalamwa,
Rabiam,
Rabiam,
Amawan,
Amawan,
Rabiam,
Rabiam,
Aqua,
Aqua,
Rabiam,
Rabiam,
Ahabiam,
Ahab,
Rabiam,
Rabiam,
Haganah,
Haganah,
Rochanaya,
Rokanai,
Wasalak,
Wasalak,
Kol,
Kal,
Katayanawa,
Tayumna,
La Akim,
Laraki,
Wa Akua,
Wakiwa,
Wayasha Allah,
Wayasha'ala,
Tamyad,
Tamyad,
Wai Walam,
Waiwalam,
Ba'asham,
Ba'asham,
Yahawashad,
Yahawashah,
the water,
the water,
Aman.
Aman.
English translation, Yahweh. In the name of Yahweh Shai, please listen to us now, right now. Send Michael and the righteous powers to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel. And send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection. And forgive all our sins for the brothers, sisters in Israel, always and forever. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, so be it. Four corners prayer. Yahweh,
Yahweh,
Ba'asham,
Ba'asham,
Yahweh Shai,
Yahushai,
Barak Nawa,
Raknawa,
Wayasha Allah,
Wayasha'ala,
Wabakia Saparia,
Wabati Saporim,
Shema,
Shammai,
Yasharallah,
Yasharallah,
Yahweh,
Yahweh,
Eloheinu,
Eloheinu,
Yahweh, Echad. All right, Salaki Yasharallah, prayer for the food. Yahweh, Gadawo, Basham, Adawanya, Yahweh Shai, Babakushai, Barak, Makau, Yanawa, Shatayawa, Yanawa, Yayan, Yanawa, Lakham, Yanawa, Shakaba, Yanawa, Zakhag, Hakhag,
Haka,
Hasakawa,
Sakawat,
Basham Yahushai Thawada Aman. All right, so a short clock Sakawaka Asherella. Enjoy the feast. Most of us will talk to you guys in the Friday class and the Sabbath service that's to follow.